A Mustang colt grew up with a loyal dog as his unlikely brother. Years later, what he did for his canine companion left everyone in tears. Get ready for an extraordinary story of friendship that crossed species boundaries and proved that family isn't always defined by blood. Rebecca Hayes wiped sweat from her brow as she scanned the barren Nevada landscape. At 35, she had spent over a decade rescuing Mustangs from drought-stricken regions. But this emergency call was different. A pregnant mare had been separated from her herd during a wildfire and was now trapped in a narrow canyon. "We need to move fast," Rebecca told her assistant, Daniel. "That fire is less than 3 miles away." They located the exhausted mare huddled against a rock wall, her sides heaving with contractions. The timing couldn't have been worse. "She's in labor," Rebecca said, approaching slowly. "We can't move her now." For the next hour, they worked to keep the terrified horse calm as she delivered her foal, a tiny colt with a distinctive white star on his forehead. As the newborn struggled to stand on wobbly legs, the sound of distant helicopters signaled the fire was changing direction. "We need to evacuate now," Daniel warned, already loading equipment. The mare, weakened from the difficult birth and smoke inhalation, collapsed as they tried to lead her to the trailer. Despite their desperate efforts, she died within minutes, leaving her newborn orphaned as the fire approached. "We can't leave him," Rebecca insisted, wrapping the trembling foal in blankets and carrying him to safety. Back at Silver Creek Sanctuary, Rebecca's small rescue operation in the Sierra Nevada foothills, the orphaned colt faced uncertain odds. Without a mother's milk, many orphaned foals didn't survive. "We'll bottle feed him every 2 hours," Rebecca told her volunteers, mixing a special formula. "I'm calling him Blaze, born from the fire." That night, as Rebecca dozed in the barn beside the vulnerable foal, she was startled awake by a soft whine. Scout, her 3-year-old Border Collie, had entered the stall and was gently nuzzling the sleeping colt. "No, Scout," Rebecca whispered, moving to separate them. "He's too fragile." But to her amazement, Blaze responded by stretching his muzzle toward the dog. Scout lay down beside the foal, his body providing warmth. The colt's breathing steadied as he pressed against his unlikely companion. Rebecca watched in disbelief as Scout began gently licking Blaze's face, the same nurturing behavior she'd seen mother dogs show puppies. The foal relaxed completely under the dog's care. Against conventional wisdom, Rebecca decided not to separate them. Throughout the night, she observed their extraordinary bond forming, Scout alerting her when Blaze needed feeding, cleaning the foal, and providing constant companionship. By 6 months of age, Blaze had transformed from a fragile orphan into a spirited colt with a shining coat and boundless energy. His growth far outpaced Scout, but their bond only strengthened as their size difference increased. Every morning began the same way. Scout would race to Blaze's paddock, barking excitedly until Rebecca opened the gate. The Border Collie would then dash between Blaze's legs, initiating their daily game of chase and play. "It's like they've created their own language," Rebecca remarked to visitors who came to witness the unusual friendship. Scout taught Blaze to play fetch, though the colt's version involved picking up sticks and dropping them rather than retrieving them properly. Blaze, in turn, showed Scout how to find the juiciest patches of grass, lowering his head beside his canine brother as they grazed together. Most remarkable was how they communicated. When Blaze became too rambunctious, Scout would nip gently at his fetlocks, causing the colt to immediately settle. When Scout wanted attention, he'd bark once, and Blaze would lower his head to nuzzle his friend. Their sleeping arrangement remained unchanged. Scout curled against Blaze in the stall each night, the colt often resting his head protectively near his smaller companion. "They're convinced they're the same species," Dr. Ramirez observed during a routine check. "I've seen dogs bond with horses before, but nothing like this. They're genuinely behaving like brothers." As Blaze approached his first birthday, Rebecca faced a decision. Most yearlings at the sanctuary were introduced to the rehabilitation herd to learn proper horse behavior before potential adoption or release. Would separating Blaze from Scout undo the progress they had made? "Let's try a short introduction," she decided. "We'll see how he responds to other horses." The initial meeting with the herd proved disastrous. Blaze panicked, running the fence line, calling for Scout, who had to be physically restrained from rushing to his friend's aid. The older horses, sensing something different about the young Mustang, kept their distance or pinned their ears disapprovingly. "He doesn't know he's a horse," Rebecca realized with growing concern. "He thinks he's part of Scout's pack." After several failed attempts to integrate Blaze with the herd, Rebecca made an unprecedented decision. She converted one of the small pastures into a special enclosure for Blaze, adding a custom dog door so Scout could come and go freely. 3 years passed in harmonious routine at Silver Creek. Blaze grew into a magnificent young stallion with the distinctive looks of his wild heritage, though his behavior remained uniquely influenced by his canine upbringing. Scout, now 6, showed the first touches of gray around his muzzle but maintained his energetic devotion to his equine brother. Their days followed a comfortable pattern. Mornings spent playing in Blaze's pasture, afternoons with Scout accompanying Rebecca on sanctuary chores while Blaze watched from his enclosure, and evenings reunited for what the volunteers called dinner dates. Everything changed when a wealthy benefactor visited the sanctuary. "That Mustang is extraordinary," Andrew Colton remarked, watching Blaze perform dog-like behaviors at Scout's guidance. "I've never seen anything like him." Colton, a renowned horse trainer with a large breeding operation in Tennessee, made Rebecca an offer that the struggling sanctuary couldn't refuse, a donation large enough to save several dozen more Mustangs in exchange for acquiring Blaze for his program. "He'll have the best care possible," Colton promised, "and his unusual intelligence would make him invaluable for our equine therapy programs." Rebecca was torn. The sanctuary needed the funding desperately, and Blaze deserved more space than their small facility could provide. But separating him from Scout seemed unthinkable. "They've never been apart," she explained to Colton. "I'm not sure Blaze would adapt." "Horses are adaptive by nature," Colton assured her, "and we can send regular updates. He'll adjust." After agonizing deliberation, Rebecca made the heartbreaking decision. Blaze would go to Tennessee, and the donation would save countless other wild horses from slaughter or starvation. Explaining to the animals proved impossible. The day the transport trailer arrived, Scout seemed to sense something was wrong. He paced anxiously as Blaze was haltered and led toward the unfamiliar vehicle. When Blaze balked at entering the trailer, Scout barked sharply, their signal for encouragement. Trusting his canine brother, Blaze stepped inside. The door closed before Scout could follow. The Border Collie's distress was immediate and devastating. He howled and scratched at the trailer as it pulled away, then raced alongside until it reached the main road. For days afterward, Scout refused food and spent hours staring down the driveway, waiting for Blaze's return. In Tennessee, Blaze faced his own struggles. Colton's staff reported that the young stallion wasn't eating, paced constantly, and kept making an unusual snorting sound, an attempt at barking for his missing brother. "He keeps searching for something," Colton reported by phone, "and he's not bonding with any of our horses. It's like he doesn't recognize them as his own kind." Weeks passed with little improvement. Blaze lost weight and condition. His bright spirit dimmed as he went through the motions of training without enthusiasm. At Silver Creek, Scout similarly declined. He became withdrawn, spending hours lying in Blaze's empty stall. "We've made a terrible mistake," Rebecca finally admitted after 2 months of separation. "This isn't working for either of them." Colton reluctantly agreed. "I've never seen a horse grieve like this. It's like he's lost part of himself." Arrangements were made for Blaze's return, but before the transport could be organized, disaster struck the sanctuary. Heavy spring rains sent flash floods roaring through the Sierra Nevada foothills, cutting off road access to Silver Creek. Power lines went down, and Rebecca lost communication with the outside world. As water levels rose around the sanctuary buildings, the situation became desperate. The horses were moved to higher ground, but supplies were limited. Worse, Scout had disappeared during the chaos, last seen heading toward the swollen creek. 1,000 miles away in Tennessee, Blaze became increasingly agitated as the storm systems moved eastward. Staff reported the stallion pacing frantically, calling out with his distinctive bark like nicker, and staring westward, as if sensing something no human could perceive. On the third night, Blaze broke through his stall door and disappeared into the darkness, heading west toward an unknown destination. Pulled by a bond that defied explanation, Blaze's escape sent shockwaves through Colton's prestigious facility. Search parties combed the surrounding countryside for days without success. "It's like he vanished," Colton told Rebecca once communication was restored. "No horse has ever escaped our facility before." Rebecca listened with growing amazement as reports of Blaze sightings began to emerge. First in western Tennessee, then southern Missouri, then Kansas. Against all odds, the Mustang appeared to be traveling west, navigating unfamiliar territory with uncanny determination. "He's trying to come home," Rebecca realized, her voice catching. "To scout." Wildlife cameras captured images of Blaze swimming across rivers, traversing highways during low-traffic hours, and even navigating around cities. Horse communities across the Midwest spread the word. Watch for a distinctive Mustang with a white star, traveling alone and moving consistently westward. "It's impossible," Dr. Ramirez insisted when Rebecca shared the updates. "A domestic horse couldn't navigate across multiple states. Even wild Mustangs only know their specific territories." But Blaze was neither fully domestic nor fully wild, and he had been raised by a Border Collie with an instinctive understanding of distance and direction. Something extraordinary was happening. Back at the recovering sanctuary, Scout remained missing. Search teams had found no sign of the Border Collie along the swollen creek or surrounding areas. Rebecca feared the worst but couldn't bring herself to give up hope. 2 weeks after his disappearance, Blaze was spotted in eastern Nevada, thin and exhausted but still moving purposefully westward. Local ranchers offered food and water, which he accepted briefly before continuing his journey. "He's covered over 1,000 miles, Rebecca told her astonished staff. "He's actually coming home." Word spread through the regional rescue community, and volunteers positioned themselves along Blaze's likely route, offering assistance without attempting to capture him. The Mustang's journey had become a testament to the depths of cross-species bonds. On a misty morning 24 days after his escape, a volunteer spotted Blaze on a ridge just 5 miles from Silver Creek. Rebecca immediately drove to the location, her heart pounding. The Mustang stood silhouetted against the dawn sky, thinner than she remembered but otherwise remarkably sound after his incredible journey. "Blaze," she called softly, approaching slowly with a halter hidden behind her back. The stallion's ears pricked forward at the familiar voice, but he didn't approach. Instead, he nickered his distinctive bark-like call, then turned and trotted purposefully toward the east fork of the creek, away from the sanctuary. "He doesn't want to come home," Rebecca realized with confusion. "He's still looking for something." She followed at a distance as Blaze picked his way down to a dangerous section of the creek where the floodwaters had carved a deep ravine. The Mustang paced along the edge, calling repeatedly with increasing urgency. Rebecca approached cautiously, fearing the unstable ground near the ravine. As she drew closer, a faint sound answered Blaze's calls. A weak bark from somewhere below. "Scout!" Rebecca gasped, rushing to the edge. There, trapped on a narrow ledge 20 feet below, lay the Border Collie, injured and emaciated but alive. He must have been swept downstream during the flood and somehow managed to climb onto the ledge, where he had been stranded for over 2 weeks. Blaze had not come home to the sanctuary. He had come directly to his brother. Rebecca stared down at the narrow ledge where Scout lay trapped, then at Blaze standing tensely at the ravine's edge. The Border Collie, hearing familiar voices, managed a weak tail wag but couldn't stand. After 2 weeks stranded without food, he was near death. "How did you know?" Rebecca whispered to Blaze, who continued his bark like nickering down to his friend. Rebecca called the sanctuary immediately, and within an hour, a rescue team arrived with ropes and emergency equipment. The ravine was too unstable for a human to climb down safely, and the ledge appeared ready to crumble at any moment. "We need a helicopter rescue," the team leader decided. But that's hours away, and I don't think the dog has that long. Throughout the discussion, Blaze paced anxiously, repeatedly approaching the edge and testing the ground with his hoof. His behavior caught the attention of Daniel, Rebecca's assistant. "He wants to help," Daniel observed. "He's looking for a way down." "That's crazy," one of the rescue workers objected. "He's just a horse." But Rebecca had witnessed the extraordinary bond between these animals for 5 years. "He's not just a horse," she corrected. "And that's not just a dog. They're brothers." After quickly discussing a dangerous alternative plan, Rebecca approached Blaze with a lightweight rope. With the rescue team's guidance, they fashioned a makeshift harness around the Mustang's chest and shoulders. "This is insane," the team leader muttered. "We're trusting a horse with a rescue operation." The plan was precarious. They would secure the rope to Blaze and the other end to a rescue worker who would attempt to reach Scout. Blaze would serve as a living anchor, using his strength and weight to stabilize the rescue line. "Blaze, stand," Rebecca commanded firmly, using the voice Scout would use during their training games. The Mustang planted his feet, lowered his head, and braced himself. A posture no human had ever taught him, but one that mimicked how Scout stabilized himself when herding on uneven ground. As the rescue worker began his cautious descent, Blaze remained remarkably still, seeming to understand the gravity of the situation. When the rope tensed suddenly due to a small rock slide, the Mustang adjusted his position without instruction, leaning back to counter the weight. "He knows exactly what he's doing," Daniel whispered in awe. The rescue worker reached Scout and secured the weakened dog into a rescue sling. As they began the careful ascent, Blaze maintained perfect tension on the line, moving slightly backward when signaled by Rebecca's voice commands. When Scout finally reached the surface, Blaze released a sound unlike anything they had ever heard before. Part nicker, part whinny, but layered with the emotional urgency of a dog's cry of recognition. He tried to approach immediately, but Rebecca held him back until the veterinarian could assess Scout's condition. "Severe dehydration, some broken ribs, and infected wounds," the vet announced. "But he'll survive. It's a miracle he lasted this long." Only then did Rebecca release Blaze, who approached his canine brother with extraordinary gentleness. The Mustang lowered his muzzle to touch Scout's face, then remained standing protectively beside the stretcher as they carried the Border Collie to the vehicle. 3 months after the dramatic rescue, Silver Creek Sanctuary hummed with unusual activity. News vans lined the driveway, and visitors from across the country waited eagerly for the day's main event, the official unveiling of the brothers' forever habitat. Scout, now fully recovered, though moving a bit more carefully with his healed ribs, sat proudly beside Rebecca as she addressed the gathered crowd. "What began as a tragedy, an orphan foal and a compassionate dog, became a story that has touched hearts worldwide," she began. "Blaze and Scout have taught us that family isn't defined by species, and love knows no boundaries." Behind them stood a newly constructed 10-acre enclosure designed specifically for the inseparable pair. Part traditional horse habitat, with room for Blaze to run. Part enriched dog environment, with agility equipment scaled for both animals. A custom-built shelter featured sleeping areas where they could remain close despite their size difference. The fundraising campaign, inspired by their story, had not only financed the special habitat, but had generated enough donations to secure Silver Creek's operations for years to come. What's more, their journey had sparked a nationwide conversation about cross-species relationships and animal cognition. Andrew Colton, the Tennessee horse trainer who had originally purchased Blaze, stood among the guests of honor. After the rescue, he had formally transferred Blaze's ownership back to the sanctuary, along with a generous endowment for his care. "I've worked with horses all my life," Colton told the audience when invited to speak. "But I've never witnessed anything like the bond between these two. Blaze wasn't just missing his home," he continued. "He was missing part of himself." Researchers from several universities had already begun studying the pair, documenting their unique communication methods and problem-solving abilities. Preliminary findings had challenged conventional understandings of animal cognition and emotional bonds. As the ceremony concluded, Rebecca opened the gate to their new habitat. Blaze entered first, exploring cautiously, with Scout following closely. The crowd watched in delighted silence as the Mustang and Border Collie investigated their new home together, perfectly synchronized in their movements. At one point, Blaze lowered his head to nuzzle Scout, who responded with a gentle lick to the horse's muzzle. A greeting ritual they had performed thousands of times, but that still moved Rebecca to tears. As evening fell and the visitors departed, Rebecca made a final check on the pair. She found them in their custom shelter, Blaze lying down with his neck curved protectively around Scout, who was curled against his brother's warm body, the same position they had assumed on their very first night together. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who understands that family isn't always defined by blood, and help us spread messages of unconditional love and extraordinary bonds that cross all boundaries.